You ever wake up one morning, step outside with a cup of coffee, and just know the world's about to pick a fight with you? That was me, that morning, standing barefoot on the porch of my 5-acre lot at the edge of Kinsman Park, Texas. The sun barely pushing through the oak branches, the air still soft and golden. It was supposed to be just another quiet start, just me, the land, and the sound of cicadas starting their lazy argument with the heat. But that's the thing about peace. It never lasts long when someone decides they can manage your life better than you can. My name's Rainer Holloway. I'm not the type to join committees or wave flags for neighborhood unity. I've got my own world out here, a patch of Texas I bought a decade ago, when this place was still nothing but open fields and dirt roads that turned to rivers when it rained. Back then, you could see the horizon without bumping into fences or HOA rules about the approved shade of beige. I worked hard for this land, cleared the brush, built the house myself, wired the well, planted the damn trees. And for 10 good years, it stayed quiet. Until Hickory Crest showed up, that shiny new community that looked like it had been copy-pasted out of a magazine. Everything in perfect symmetry, every blade of grass measured, every house the same shade of forgettable. And running it all was Diane Kendall, the queen of conformity, the president of the Hickory Crest Homeowners Association, and, as I'd come to learn, a woman who didn't like the word no. I wasn't one of them. My land was outside their jurisdiction, legally, completely. But that didn't stop Diane from trying. I guess, to her, my wild oaks and mismatched fences were like a stain on her perfect canvas. My property stood right at the border of her world of order, a messy reminder that freedom still existed just a few yards beyond her control. She came by one afternoon. I remember it like a scene out of a bad movie. The sun was sinking low, and there she was, walking up my driveway in a navy blue suit, heels clicking against the gravel, 2 men in ties trailing behind her carrying clipboards like bodyguards. I didn't move from my chair on the porch, just tipped my hat up and watched her climb the steps with that smile of someone who's already decided she's about to win. "Rainer," she said, like we were old friends. "Always a pleasure." "Doubt that," I said, slow, setting my beard down. "What brings royalty to the woods?" Her lips twitched, but she kept the act. "Let's cut to the chase," she said, sliding an envelope onto the small table beside me. "We're offering you a generous price for your land, far above market value. The community needs new recreational space. Your property is perfectly suited for a park, a beautiful open green space where families can gather safely under HOA supervision. Think of it as a contribution to something bigger than yourself." I didn't even glance at the papers. I knew exactly what they were, the opening move. The illusion of politeness before the pressure started. "Not selling," I said. Her smile thinned, a small crack showing through the perfection. "Rainer, be reasonable. This area is changing. Holding on to land like this is impractical. Eventually, development will surround you, and you'll have no choice. I'm giving you the chance to do this on your own terms." I leaned forward, met her eyes, and said quietly, "My own terms are staying put." The temperature between us dropped 10 degrees. She exhaled sharply through her nose, nodded to the men beside her, and they started packing their folders. But before leaving, she turned back, leaned in close enough that I could smell the perfume under all that control. "I'd hate to see you start having difficulties, Rainer," she said softly. "Land can become complicated when the wrong people decide it's a problem." "Was that a threat?" I asked. "Of course not," she said with a colder smile. "Just friendly advice." Then she turned, heels clicking again, and her little convoy disappeared down my road in a cloud of dust. I sat there for a long while, staring after her, beer sweating in my hand, listening to the cicadas scream louder than usual. I wasn't worried, not yet. I'd dealt with bureaucrats before, but there was something in her eyes I didn't like. Something that said this wasn't over. The first strike came the next morning. I found a bright orange notice plastered on my mailbox, the kind of thing you usually see on condemned buildings or crime scenes. In bold letters, it read, "Violation notice. Failure to maintain aesthetic standards. Fine, $500. I actually laughed. Out loud. It had the official Hickory Crest HOA logo on it, the same HOA I wasn't even a part of. And then, out at the edge of my property, I spotted them. A small group of people with clipboards, murmuring, glancing at my house, like vultures waiting for permission to peck. I recognized one or two of them, residents from the development. I walked over slowly, coffee in hand, boots crunching gravel. "Morning," I said. "Something I can help you with?" One of them, a balding guy with glasses and a badge that read Property Standards Committee, cleared his throat. "We're conducting a routine assessment." "Assessment of what?" "Your lawn," he said, squinting at his clipboard. "It doesn't comply with community standards. Also, there's an unauthorized structure on your property." I frowned. "You mean my shed? The one that's been here longer than your whole neighborhood?" The man hesitated. "Under the new HOA guidelines, all properties adjacent to Hickory Crest must adhere to basic uniformity standards to preserve property values." I took a step closer, the kind that makes a man rethink his words. "That's cute," I said, "but I don't remember signing anything that gives you authority over my land." He stammered. "Well, no, but the HOA reserves the right to enforce external aesthetic regulations." "Yeah," I said, turning away. "You go ahead and enforce that somewhere else." I walked back to the porch, sipping my coffee, trying not to laugh at the absurdity. But deep down, something told me this was just round one. The next morning, my mailbox was gone. Not knocked over, gone. Splintered at the base like someone had taken a bat to it in the middle of the night. No cameras caught it, no tire tracks in the dirt, just silence and the faint smell of gasoline. And then came the letters. Every other day, stuffed under my doorframe. Violation for unapproved outdoor storage. Failure to maintain landscape uniformity. Accumulated debris on visible property edge. The debris, by the way, was my stacked firewood. And finally, the big one. A thick white envelope stamped in red. Invoice. Unpaid HOA dues. $1,250. And beneath it, in bold, failure to pay within 30 days will result in a lien placed on your property. That's when I stopped laughing. They weren't playing games anymore. The next few days felt like living inside someone else's bad dream. Every morning, there was something new. A notice taped to my door, a truck idling near the property line, the faint click of camera shutters from across the fence. Hickory Crest was making its move, not with bulldozers, not yet, but with paper, intimidation, and lies printed on letterhead. Then came the noise. It was around 6 in the morning when I first heard it. Heavy engines, metal scraping gravel, men shouting over the whine of drills. I grabbed my boots, still half asleep, and walked outside expecting a county road crew. But what I saw made my stomach drop. At the far edge of my land, a team of workers in neon vests were hammering stakes into the ground, measuring tape stretched between them, bright orange flags fluttering in the breeze. And there, right near my driveway, stood a tall wooden sign, still fresh with wet paint. Future site of Hickory Crest Community Park. Construction begins soon. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I was hallucinating. Then the anger hit, a slow, steady burn that started in my chest and climbed to my throat. I set my coffee down on the porch railing, walked toward them, and called out, "Hey, you want to tell me why you're building a park on my property?" One of the men looked up, older guy, clipboard in hand, probably the foreman. "Morning, sir. This is HOA property. We're just following orders." I stared at him, speechless for a second, then laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds more like disbelief than humor. "HOA property? You might want to check your GPS, pal. You're standing on private land. Mine." He frowned, shuffled through his papers. "Says here this parcel was recently incorporated into Hickory Crest jurisdiction." "Recently?" I said, stepping closer. "Buddy, I've owned this land for 10 years. No one incorporated anything except me when I bought it." He looked uneasy now. "Look, we're just doing what the HOA contracted us for. You've got an issue, take it up with them." I took one slow step forward, my voice dropping. "You've got 10 seconds to pack up your gear and leave before I call the sheriff and have every one of you charged with trespassing." The man hesitated, then gave a small nod. Within minutes, they were tossing tools into their truck and peeling the orange flags out of the dirt. I watched them drive away, the dust cloud curling behind their tires, and then turned toward the sign. Big green letters. Glossy finish. Expensive. I yanked it out of the ground with both hands, slung it into the bed of my pickup, and drove straight into Hickory Crest. The HOA office sat right at the entrance to the community, a red brick building that looked more like a bank than a neighborhood center. Perfect hedges. Perfect parking lot. Even the welcome mat looked ironed. I carried the sign under my arm, pushed through the glass doors, and dropped it onto the receptionist's pristine white desk with a thud that made her flinch. "I need to see Diane," I said. The receptionist blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" I leaned in, lowered my voice. "No, but you tell her if she doesn't see me right now, my next stop's the sheriff's office." That got me in faster than any appointment ever could. Diane walked out from a side door less than a minute later. Same navy blue suit, same tightly pinned blonde hair, same mask of politeness barely stretched over contempt. "Raynor," she said smoothly, "what an unexpected visit." "Cut the pleasantries," I snapped. "I just caught your crew staking claims on my land. Care to explain why?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, that must be a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I picked up the sign and slammed it upright against her desk. "Your paperwork says my land is part of your community now. That's not a misunderstanding, Diane. That's fraud." She sighed, feigning patience. "The HOA recently passed a community planning initiative. Under it, we have the right to incorporate adjacent or underutilized properties for the greater good of the neighborhood. It's all above board." I took a step closer. "So you just decided my land was underutilized? You think adding a park to your brochure gives you the right to steal from me?" Diane's voice dropped to that soft, dangerous tone I'd heard once before. "It's not theft, Raynor. It's vision. The county supports us, the board supports us, and soon the courts will too. You can fight if you want, but you'll lose. People like you always do." I stared at her, every muscle in my jaw tight. Then I said, quiet and even, "You better pray you have your paperwork in order. Because if you don't, I'm not just fighting, I'm burying you." She blinked, just once. That perfect smile flickered for half a heartbeat. Then she straightened. "Have a nice day, Mr. Holloway." I left before I did something that'd get me arrested. By the time I made it home, my lawyer was already on the phone. Mark Calloway, the kind of attorney who didn't wear ties or waste time with small talk. I told him everything. The fake notices, the crew, the sign, the bogus incorporation. He went quiet for a second, then said, "If they filed paperwork with the county, this isn't harassment anymore. It's criminal. We need to verify the deed immediately." Within hours, he'd filed a formal complaint with the County Land Records Office demanding verification. If Diane's crew had forged or falsified anything, the county database would expose it. But I wasn't about to just wait for bureaucracy to crawl along. That night, I started digging. Every HOA has to file public reports, budgets, annual statements, community improvement plans. So I opened my laptop, pulled every file I could find tied to Hickory Crest, and started reading. Within an hour, I found my first red flag. Literally, a line item marked Emergency Infrastructure Reserve Fund, $175,000 withdrawn over 2 fiscal years with zero documentation. Then another, Community Aesthetic Improvement Initiative, $93,000, no receipts. And right there, in the same document, a budget note dated 3 weeks ago. Projected expenses, Hickory Crest Community Park Project. I sat back, shaking my head. They'd already planned it. My land, my trees, my home, budgeted as a project expense. By morning, I'd made copies of everything. Then I drove into Hickory Crest, not to the office this time, but door to door, neighbor to neighbor. Half of them barely looked at me, afraid to even open the door when I said HOA. But a few listened. A retired teacher, a young couple with a baby, a mechanic who'd been fined 3 times for unsightly tools visible from the street. And when I showed them the documents, when they saw where their fees were going, something started to crack. "This isn't a homeowners association," I told them. "It's a racket." Within a week, we had signatures. Dozens of them. A petition demanding a full financial audit of Hickory Crest HOA and an independent review of the land claim against me. My lawyer filed it the next day, attaching every irregularity I'd uncovered. And then, the hammer dropped. The county clerk called Mark. No land transfer had ever been approved. No annexation, no jurisdictional change, nothing. My deed was clean, which meant the HOA's claim wasn't just invalid. It was forged. Mark didn't waste time. He filed an emergency injunction that same afternoon, blocking the HOA from taking any further action related to my property. Then he sent a letter to Diane. Short, sharp, and final. Cease all activity on the Holloway property immediately or face prosecution under Texas Penal Code 37.10 for tampering with governmental records. For a few days, it got quiet. No more notices. No strange cars parked near my fence. I started to think maybe it was over. Then the media found out. Local headlines lit up like wildfire. Homeowners accuse Hickory Crest HOA of fraud. The story spread fast. Interviews, photos, angry quotes from residents who'd been fined into silence for years. Reporters camped outside the HOA office. Diane refused to comment, but that didn't matter. The story had legs, and it was running straight at her. The county audit started, and what it found made even me sick. Hundreds of thousands in administrative fees missing. Bogus fines issued to homeowners. Fake invoices for community improvements. That never happened. It wasn't a neighborhood anymore. It was a money-printing machine, and Diane was the one pulling the lever. The next HOA meeting was chaos. Residents packed the clubhouse, waving printouts, shouting over each other. I didn't go inside at first. I just stood by the door, listening. I could hear her voice, still trying to sound calm. "These reports are misleading," she said. "This is all a misunderstanding." But the crowd wasn't buying it. They were done being polite. Someone shouted, "You used our money to try and steal his land." Another yelled, "We want your resignation." Then came the chant, low at first, then louder, until it filled the room. "Step down, step down, step down." By the time I walked in, half the board had already turned on her. A vote was held right there. The woman who had built an empire out of fines and fear was stripped of her title in less than 5 minutes. I thought that was the end. But justice, real justice, has a way of showing up late, just when you've started to doubt it'll ever come. 1 week later, I was on my porch again, same coffee mug, same sunrise, when I saw 2 police cruisers pull up to the HOA office. A few minutes later, Diane Kindle walked out in handcuffs. Fraud. Misappropriation of funds. Forgery. She looked smaller then, like the air had gone out of her. As she was being led to the car, our eyes met one last time across the fence line. No words, just silence. Then I raised my cup. A toast. To the end of her little kingdom. The thing about victory is, it doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence. The kind that sits heavy on your land after the last truck's gone, after the shouting's faded, after the noise of people trying to own what isn't theirs finally burns itself out. That morning, after they hauled Diane away, I just stood there on my porch watching the cruisers disappear into the distance. The sun was climbing, painting the oak leaves gold, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder. The land felt clean again, mine again. Within a week, the county officially voided every single claim the HOA had filed against me. The fraudulent annexation, the violation notices, the fake invoices, all null and void. The injunction became permanent, and a new order went out from the county attorney's office. Any future attempt to annex the Holloway property will be prosecuted as criminal trespass. The Hickory Crest HOA didn't survive the storm. The audit tore them apart from the inside out. The board members who hadn't already fled were slapped with subpoenas. Angry homeowners sued for restitution, for wrongful foreclosure, for emotional distress, and the ones who'd been too scared to speak before suddenly found their voices. By the end of that month, the HOA was gone, bankrupt, dissolved by the state. Their office sat empty, windows dark, letters piling at the door. And me? I went out there with a few of the residents, the ones who'd come to me afterward to shake my hand, to apologize for not seeing what was happening sooner. And we took that old community park coming soon sign, the one I'd ripped out of my soil, and burned it right there by the fence line. We didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The crackle of the fire said everything. A few days later, I had a new sign made. Thick cedar board, hand-carved letters in black paint. It read, "Private property, no trespassing, HOA not welcome." I set it in concrete at the same spot where their fake park sign had stood. It wasn't just a warning, it was a promise. A line in the dirt that said, "Once and for all, this land answers to me and nobody else." Some of the folks from Hickory Crest helped me install it. The same people who used to cross the street when they saw me at the feed store were now bringing me cold beers and shovels, saying things like, "Never thought I'd say it, but you did the right thing, Rainer. You saved more than your land." Maybe that was true. Maybe not. All I knew was, freedom costs sweat, and sometimes it costs peace too. But it's worth every ounce. Then came the last surprise. A letter from the county. They wanted me to join an advisory board, community mediation and land rights committee. Basically, They wanted me to help settle disputes between homeowners and HOAs before they turned into wars. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. I called my lawyer, Mark, and told him. He said, "You should do it. Who better to talk about boundaries than the guy who actually held one?" Maybe he's right. I haven't decided yet. I kind of like my quiet life the way it is. Alicia, one of the former HOA members who'd leaked Diane's emails to the press, stopped by a while after that. Brought coffee and a stack of papers. She's starting a blog about land rights, homeowner abuse, and the dark side of community control. She asked if I'd write something for her first post. I told her I'd think about it. I'm not much of a writer, but I know a thing or two about standing your ground. That night, I sat on my porch again, same spot, same view. The cicadas were back, the stars cutting sharp across the black. And I realized something. The land hadn't changed. Not really. The trees were still there. The well still hummed. The air still smelled like cedar and rain. What changed was me. I'd spent years thinking peace meant silence, meant staying out of people's way. But sometimes peace means saying no. Saying it loud enough that the whole damn world hears you. A few months later, a car pulled over near my gate. A family from Hickory Crest, mom, dad, 2 kids, climbed out to take a walk. The dad waved, kind of sheepish. "Hey," he called. "Hope it's okay. We're just letting the kids stretch their legs." I smiled. "You're fine. Just stay on the road." He grinned, nodded, and as he turned away, his little boy pointed to my new sign. "Daddy, what's HOA mean?" The dad hesitated. Then he said, "It means don't mess with Rayner's land." The kid laughed, and they kept walking. I sat back down, finished my coffee, and let that sink in. Maybe that's what legacy really is. Not parks or plaques or perfect lawns, but a story people remember. A story that says, this is where one man drew the line and didn't move. And if someone ever asks what I learned through all of this, I'll tell them straight. Freedom doesn't come from permission. It comes from boundaries. And if you don't defend yours, someone else will gladly write them for you. So now I'll ask you, what would you have done if the HOA planted a sign on your land and called it theirs? Would you have fought back or folded to keep the peace? Tell me in the comments. Because out here, where the fences meet the horizon, I've learned one thing. Peace isn't given. It's earned.